Okay, so this video is on how to calculate a mean from a frequency distribution. Okay, so generally speaking, you may not always get your data as a nice, neat list of information. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to look at what happens if you get it in like a frequency distribution table. And what we're going to use here as our example is electoral college. So we're going to have the left part of this going to be the electoral number of electoral votes a state or the District of Columbia gets, and how many states or electoral colleges, or the District of Columbia rather, how many states have that many votes in the electoral college. Okay, so this is the number of electoral votes that they get. This is the number of states that have that many. So we'll break this into classes of like size 10. So it goes 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, and 50 to 59. We don't have to go any further because California with its 55 votes, so there's one state with that many. California with its 55 votes is the only one there. So 30 either states or the District of Columbia have between 0 and 9 electoral votes. Then it drops to 15 between 10 and 19. 4 have between 20 and 29. 1, that's being Texas, is between 30 and 39. None between 40 and 49, and then California with 50 to 59. So it's pretty clear that California is actually an outlier here, or at least an exceptional value. We'll see later on if it's a technical outlier, but it's pretty huge, the size of that state. Maryland falls in this category here. We have 10 electoral votes, so we're on the lower end of that category. Okay, so in order to do this, what we do is we actually transform each of these classes into its midpoint. So we find the midpoint of the class. So we average 0 and 9 and get 4.5, 10 and 19 is 14.5, 20 and 29 is going to be 24.5, 30 and 39 is 34.5, 40 and 49 is 44.5, 50 and 59 is 54.5. So we're actually going to let these midpoints serve as a surrogate for the mean. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're basically going to create a weighted mean here, and we're going to say, okay, we're going to approximate the mean as, okay, let's say there were 30 who had a midpoint of 4.5, and then there were 15 who had a midpoint of 14.5, and we had 4 who had a midpoint of 24.5, and we had 1 that had a midpoint of 34.5, and 0 who had a midpoint of 44.5, and 1 who had a midpoint of 54.5. And all total, there are 51 states plus the District of Columbia. And if you actually do this calculation and multiply that all out, you're going to get the number approximately 10.6. Now there's a little rounding there. Remember, we rounded one more decimal point than in the data set. The frequencies here are all no decimal points, so we get 1 decimal point in the round. So what did we do? We found the midpoint of each class, right? And then we multiplied it by the frequency for each class, and then we divided that by the total of the frequencies, and that gave us a pretty good estimate for the mean of the set. How good is that estimate? Well, let's get a little bit of space here. So let me carve out a little piece of land here to do a little bit of calculating. There are 535 members of the Electoral College being divided by 51 states in the District of Columbia. And that number comes out as 10.5 if you do the actual mean. So 10.6, really close to that. This is a pretty good indicator. It's a pretty good estimate. Let's take a look at how we can use the calculator to do this. You'd have to first find these midpoints by hand, okay? And then you can use those with the frequencies with the calculator. So ultimately we're going to load these into L1. I'm going to load these into L2. And then we're going to let the calculator do this work all by itself. So let's see how that works. Okay, so I have my calculator here, and we said that we're going to load these into L1 and L2. So we're going to put the class midpoints, 4.5, 14.5, 24.5, 34.5, 44.5, 54.5 into L1, and then we're going to go over to L2 and we're going to put in the frequencies 30, 15, 4, 1, 0, 1. Okay, so now I have like what would be the left side of the table and the right side of the table all kind of loaded in here. And I said the calculator will do the work. So if I go back to the main screen and I say stat calculate one variable statistics, and I want the list, that's the class midpoints, to be L1. Aha, frequency list. I'm going to say that's where I stored my frequencies. In L2, I type calculate, and right there is that 10.6 that we got for the mean, right? Now it gives us a whole bunch of other information. Some of it may be more valid than not, but that's the key here, is getting the mean out of the frequency table. If you can find those class midpoints and load them into L1, load the frequencies into L2, all of that weighted mean kind of math stuff the calculator will do for you. All right, so there you go, how to create a mean out of a frequency distribution.